Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our latest webinar, Microsoft Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform for Construction. My name is Gareth Boyle, the Senior Marketing Executive for Microsoft here at Fusion 5, and I'm joined today by Country Manager for CEC, Christy Brown, Solution Strategy Manager for CEC, Jonathan Rickard, and CEC Consultant, Navin Kure. During the session today, we will be covering the following elements: improving the buyer journey and customer experience, delivering personalised customer engagement through intelligent marketing, management of subcontractors, customer insights, digital transformation, asset management, and day sheet planning and entry. Before I hand over to our first speaker, just a few bits of housekeeping. We will hold a short Q&A at the end of the presentation, so if you do have any questions as we progress, please feel free to submit them via the top right-hand corner of your browser or Teams application. In addition, the session will also be recorded and we will share it with you after the presentation has concluded. So without further ado, let's kick things off with our first speaker, Christy Brown. Christy.
Hello everybody, good morning for those in Australia and afternoon for those in New Zealand. Thank you for taking your time over lunchtime to join with us in a conversation around digital transformation specifically for the construction sector. So getting started, we wanted to tell a story really around an experience that we've had working with one of New Zealand's large construction companies. And we found that this theme is absolutely resonating with a lot of the organisations that we've been working with across the last couple of years. And that is that the sector is rapidly changing. It's clear that in construction that the industry is experiencing a digital awakening of sorts. So where previously manual processes, manual forms, Excel spreadsheets and the like were totally acceptable, it's clear that it's not anymore, and that competitors are waking up and really transforming their own businesses fast with digital transformation. So one of the key messages that we were shared as part of this digital transformation journey we had with this large organisation was that the scale of digital transformation means we need to think differently about how we build apps and digitise manual and paper processes and workflows. And I'm sure for your organisations, this is something that you're encountering today. So what we used to experience in a traditional digital transformation journey was that a customer would know that there was something that they had to fix. You know, something had been brought to the table, whether it was their ability to manage their timesheets or their compliance and their construction equipment or something similar. But there was clearly a need for transformation. However, what used to happen is that we would see that a foundational project was necessary. And so if you think about the workflow of what that means, number one, we need to go and prove to somebody we need to spend a heck of a lot of money, and that's your business case kind of stage. Typically speaking, procurement organisations would get involved, parts of your business to say, no, you can't just choose someone off the street. We need to do a sensible procurement journey, and therefore we'll do an RFP. Maybe it was even started with an RFI first and then an RFP. Then you'll start to go through that vendor selection process, start to negotiate contracts, start to understand what our requirements are, and you can really get, you know, at least a year down the track before you start to work on some of the strategic projects that you need to do. And then finally, a couple of years later, the businesses are going ahead and tackling their tactical project. And as you can appreciate, the problem that you saw a couple of years ago still exists in the ecosystem today. So when we were talking to this very large organisation here, we understood that they had a need to do both at once. It wasn't just a tactical project, it was also the internal foundations were flawed and needed to be remedied. So I guess that leads us on to the journey we're going to take you through today, where a business is able to truly, leveraging the power of the entire platform that's available with Microsoft, make both changes at once, do both your core foundations using Dynamics 365 with all of its underlying goodness of a shared data model, security, compliance, and those type of things, but also work with a platform called the Power Platform, which enables you to do rapid transformation and solve for rapid business process problems really quickly in-house. So I'm going to talk to you today about some of the foundational things that you can do using Dynamics 365 as a core platform to fix the underlying layers of how you're working with your business. And then soon we'll go through some of the more tactical projects that we've done that are solving for that key little problem, if you like, that you know exists in the ecosystem and you don't want to wait 2 years for. So looking at the core foundational side of things, we have a project that we can share here, which is around the management of your project bid risk and the compliance around it. Now, as I'm sure you can appreciate better than we can, if you get this stuff wrong, it can have severe consequences for your business, be it reputational harm, be it a direct immediate cost. And so clearly for this organisation, that wasn't something that they wanted to see happen in the ecosystem, and they really did need to bring these things together. So to start with, what we have done is using the Dynamics 365 platform. We're seeing here if you like, a staged approach to a bid management journey. So on this screen, what we're able to bring together is some of the core information around that bid. Who are the people we're dealing with? What various stages does it need to go through? And when are those stages due, as you're seeing in all of the middle pane there? And then in the right-hand side, what you're seeing are the various categories of the bid in which they have to go through. Now, depending on 4 different kind of risk areas will define what categories that the project, or the bid, sorry, is relevant to. And based on the various categorization, will actually drive some real smarts associated with approval routing and the like. So if you can think about a project that, for example, is fixed cost, and maybe it's with somebody you've not done a bid with before, you're using subcontractors you don't really know, well, that's obviously something which is going to probably see itself with a category that requires a lot more approvals than what would be something that's pretty simple. Let's say that it's a variable cost and that it's maybe coming from someone like master builders where they know and trust them very, very well. And so on this one screen, you can actually see a lot of core rich information around the approvals, timelines, and also the categorization that's been defined. As we move into the next view, you'll start to be able to understand some other really neat things around what's happening as far as the approvers are concerned. So again, thinking about the categorization that's been driven by the various inputs that we put prior around the procurement journey perhaps, or around the dollar value and so on and so forth, will actually start to drive systematically how many approvals are needed, who's done those approvals, and when did they make the approvals. So by clicking into each of these approvers here, what you can't see is exactly that rich information. How long did it sit with that approver perhaps? And what comments did they make when they were making that approval? So you have that real clear visibility and line of sight on whether Buzz or Brian Alden or maybe Neil Armstrong is doing the right thing or needs some further coaching and guidance in terms of providing those approvals, as well as having comfort that it is going through each of those stages as you intended. And then finally, if we move into the next view, what we're able to see from here are the various documentation and compliance requirements associated with that category. And so all of this information is dynamically populated, which means basically that by the category you select and the early setup, the system will know exactly what is required to be able to clear that stage, if you like, and to ensure that all the compliance needs are met. Now, I can say for this organisation, they've had a very rigorous audit process go through recently, and with this platform in place, it passed with absolutely flying colours. I think the language used by the auditor was exciting, and I've certainly been through a lot of approval processes and audits in my time, and I've never heard an auditor use language like exciting. So it's clear to see that this has become a solution that's underpinned the governance, risk mitigation and controls for this organisation going forward, and they should sleep better at night at that board and director level. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Jonathan, who's going to share with you some thinking in terms of how we can solve for some of that tactical improvements, things that you know need solved for today that you don't necessarily want to wait 2 years or more for. So over to you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Christy. And I'll just do some last comments on this solution because it's such a cool one, such a useful one. You'll see here these links to these documents, and that's because the organisation had done a massive amount of work to understand what sort of internal processes they needed to be consistent, but then to achieve those and to have sort of review stages and those approval stages, people did need to assemble data into documents. And so a lot of time was spent duplicating a lot of that data that goes into documents. So one of the key benefits of this platform is that it has essentially removed a lot of that time that users had to spend populating data into documents. It creates those automatically based on the characteristics of the project, and then they can use those inside those internal processes. The other part, because the overarching stages are digitized, it means that they can measure much more effectively what their pipeline of projects look like and what stage they're at, what risk profile they have, and what approval stages they're at. And that also means, because the all surrounding metadata of the project is digitized, that after the fact, they've got much more ability to measure what went on and to go back and deal with any questions or questions or inquiries on projects that have been completed. So it's been a huge gain from the digitization of this foundational process across the business. So as Christy noted, while working on those foundations, there also remain some of those other issues to deal with, those tactical projects. And those are things that, because they'd often be dependent completely on the foundations, they hadn't, they'd often had to wait 1 to 2 years before. But the benefit of the Dynamics 365 and Power Platform approach is that the underlying low-code platform allows you to tackle some of those tactical projects very quickly and even concurrently. So what do I mean by a low-code platform? Well, fundamentally, you've got the pre-built applications of Dynamics 365 plus your Office tools and plus LinkedIn on the side that Microsoft owns. And so Dynamics 365 is your core business application pre-built, and you can configure it. Underneath, you do have a data layer, so that's where your business data goes, but you can also use connectors to bring in other data or to make other tools using that data layer. And you've got the Power Platform, what we call the Power Platform, which is essentially tools that you can use to extend that core business application, but also tools that you can use to create tactical solutions on the side, even while you're concurrently working on your foundations. So you may be familiar with things like Power BI and perhaps Power Apps, but what the Power Platform is the ability to act. So you can create, configure apps using low-code tools. By that I mean that the types of people who can build an Excel spreadsheet analysis or an Access database will find it very easy to onboard into the building of apps or configuring apps and Power Apps. You've also got an automation engine, which is a kind of, if this happens, then do that process designer, which again is low code, so you don't need to be a developer. And then you've got the ability to analyze and create visualizations over the top of your data in Power BI, and that's a tool that many are familiar with. So I wanted to talk you through a couple of examples of what we've done both with this organization and a couple of others using the Power Platform. So the first one, there was a need for digitizing the maintenance process of heavy equipment. The organization has a lot of construction equipment, and they were using clipboards and paper forms to carry out and manage the maintenance of these different pieces of equipment. So that created a lot of manual input and work after the fact, that all this data then had to be digitized and entered into different systems, multiple different systems, ERP and time systems. But it also created other issues because it created a lack of visibility of what equipment was available, and also slowed the process of procuring that equipment onto projects. And so it got to the point where this was having such an effect that some project crews were finding it easier to go out and hire equipment from outside than use their own equipment, because they didn't have visibility of what was where and available. So we created, using these low-code tools and rapid sort of iterative configuration, we pulled together a tablet-based interface designed for the people who carry out the maintenance. So this was done with the people on the ground who do the maintenance, very much focused on how can we make it easy for you to do this task, not difficult, because they did not want something that was going to be hard and they simply would not use it. So it was very much focused on making as little as possible data entry, so they can choose the piece of machinery like a crane, and they can choose the applicable filtered list of services, and then they can generate those actions that need to be completed automatically for the piece of equipment that they are servicing. All the surrounding data, like the date of service and who serviced it, of course, gets taken care of because it's part of the system. And so then they can go through and complete these tasks and even make notes on these, and even use, say, device hardware such as a camera to take photos if needed and record that back against the piece of equipment. So then once that's finished, that gets recorded that the equipment has been serviced and it's back into being available for use. The other sort of part of this is, of course, you need to be doing it safely, and so the team needed to be able to record or manage the health and safety aspects, but also make sure that the controls were done around health and safety and that they could record hazards if any occurred and sign off on that process. So Again, picking the equipment, making it nice and easy with clear buttons to use, and then the ability to go through and tick off things that were done, make sure that they have been done, and then save that and even sign things off. So the worker can sign off with their signature just on the screen and save that back into the records. Of course, that's in the tablet interface, and what you would have seen before was more the administrative interface that the team back in the office uses. And again, you get that too as part of Power Apps. So all this data goes into that data layer that sits underneath, and that way you can use it, whether it's to automate actions into other systems or automate approvals and tasks, or just to be able to feed back into your internal processes. So part then of out the other end of that completing the service is that they wanted to be able to then automate and digitize that recording of time. So instead of paper timesheets that they had previously to do, because you've done the task in a system on a device, you can take out the information out the other side of how long it took, and you can allow people to edit that, but essentially you can go through and generate a lot of that data and take the work away from them. And so they did that, and that feeds through again into the administrative interface, where you can have your sign-off process for what work was done, and therefore any sort of cost or billable implications, or any taking it through to the finance system against the asset, and also through to the time and payroll system, which is a separate system in this case. So that's that advantage of being able to approach some of those more tactical or small problems. Another one that we worked with in a similar organization is, again, this day sheet sort of view for an organization that has to carry out maintenance on their assets too. So this is for a yard. It assembles the list of the assets that are going to be worked on for that yard, and they can go through and make changes to these. They can also go in and edit the job, add information to that. Again, you'll see it's very much focused on making it simple through the tablet interface, simple buttons, easy to enter data, and they can go through and record any, say, stock on this. So the other part of this app was then the ability to have the daily view of what work was completed and submit that through and feed that into the internal process. Now, we did mention that there were a couple of other use cases that we've worked on. Those in the construction sector, a few things that we worked on here, again, using this ability to create these tactical solutions quite rapidly, is that the organisation also had the need to deal with legal matters. And that was the legal team across their entire construction business needed to track time, spent both internally and externally against each matter. And that was previously managed in Excel, which made it quite difficult then to round things up at the end of the month for reporting, but also in internal discussion and reporting up to the CEO level. So this is where, again, Power Apps came in very handy, and the ability to import information in, say, Excel format from external legal suppliers was made quite easy and seamless into the underlying Power application. And then they could use Power BI on top of that to create reporting so that they had great real-time visibility of how much time was being spent on legal matters. And one that we've just been working through with one in the construction sector is in the management of home health and safety standard, or home health standard ratings. And so this was one where, as I noted before, organizations are already working on these sorts of problems. They're just typically doing it inside Microsoft Excel or Access or in paper form. And so they are putting effort and time into these, and it is costing them. So what we did with this group was to run a kind of rapid proof of concept where we essentially worked with them one-on-one to go through, look at what they were currently doing inside an Access database and work that up into the platform so that it could be available, one, online, two, with security of their identities and the management of data tools, and thus the ability to prevent data loss. And three, it could then be made available for, say, connecting out to the suppliers who actually submit a lot of that information. So that's the next stage. But this was done in a matter of days to get a working proof of concept that they can now progress toward production. So these are things, as mentioned, organizations are already doing, but it's about getting it into a platform where they can use use it online, and also with a lot of the governance that you simply don't get when people are forced to do it in Excel spreadsheets and Access databases. And so that's a benefit of the platform as a whole, that you can, inside Dynamics 365, work on those foundational pieces, the ones that are core to your business, but you can also work on the tactical problems at the same time and address many of those internal processes that are costing a lot of time and money. And that really circles back to that point that we had at the start, that the scale of digital transformation means that we do need to think differently. And this quote was not our quote, this was a quote from our customer, the large construction company. So with that, I'm going to hand over to our next speaker to take you through another facet of the industry and how Dynamics has been applied there. Navin.
Thanks, Jonathan. I'm just going to share my screen. Awesome.
Thanks, Nav. That's good to go, bud.
Cool. Thanks, Gareth. So yeah, as Jonathan mentioned, the next few slides that I'm going to touch on are specific to the home building journey, which is a little bit different to what you've just seen from Christy and Jonathan. This is more focused on that customer journey, dealing with different clients in different areas, and also touching on how the different ways in which you can actually market to them, not just using the standard ways. So with that being said, I'm going to kick off my slides. So something that we've seen predominantly in the home building industry is that the systems in which the users are using are extremely complicated. Our intention is you want to be able to deliver the best experience to your customer, but in order to do that, you need to provide the best experience for the users actually using the system, because if they're within a system that's too complicated to use, it means that they're just going to be hindered by a system and they're not going to be able to provide the best service to their customers. So the items that I'm going to touch on are, it's in the title, they may seem very basic, but it's something that we don't see executed as they should be. So the first one is what we call data input forms. So this is essentially the way in which your sales consultants, your sales reps, managers, etc., are creating new leads, opportunities, and contacts. So there's a bit of a fine balance in that you don't want to over inundate them with too much information to capture. The market is so hot at the moment within this home building industry at the moment. There's a lot of people coming in. So from a sales consultant point of view, they don't really want to be wasting time having to populate too much information, because their intention is they just want to get straight to that deposit phase. They want to make that customer pay a deposit. So if you have too much information that the sales consultant has to populate, they're just going to end up putting in dummy data, which over time that compounds, and you don't get the real value from your CRM system because you're not getting accurate data into your system. So what we like to encourage is making sure that you really think about, as a business, what's the key information that you do want to capture. So things like the region, their time frame to purchase, have they got finance yet? These are some key factors that you do want to be capturing, and make sure that that's sort of at the forefront of the form when users are sort of creating that record, which means they can open up a form. It's on the left-hand side, they keep hitting tab, 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 and they enter the data and the records in the system. They've got the relevant data that they need, and they can then move on to the more dealing with the customer and having that conversation with them. Next item, which is a key part of their job, is activities. So again, this is something that we've seen executed quite poorly. So what we've seen a lot is people have to, within the system, you're receiving emails, phone calls, notes, and all of that is being copied from their Outlook, from their own OneNote, from their own handwritten notes, and then they're pasting that into the CRM as a generic activity type. So that's bad for a few reasons. Firstly, it's hard to report on those types of activities because it's just a general activity. Secondly, it's hard to refer to when you're dealing with a particular client. If you're looking at their contact record, trying to see what their full activity history is, it's very hard to do. So what is extremely important is that the way in which consultants and assistants and associates are creating activities is extremely easy. They should be, whether they're in a lead, a contact, or an opportunity, or working from their dashboard, it should be a click of a button to create a phone call, email, or add a note to the particular record, and it should be segmented by its activity type. So making sure you know if it's an email or a phone call or an appointment. The beauty of Microsoft Dynamics is that it's fully integrated with the Microsoft suite. So Outlook integration is huge because that just comes standard. So it's something you just turn on. So that way, any emails that your customers are sending you or you're sending to your customers automatically get tracked against their record in the CRM system. So there's no copying and pasting. You're not spending time doing that manual process. It's automatically tracked within their record in Dynamics. Microsoft Teams integration is also extremely important. Obviously, with COVID hitting over the last 2 years, virtual appointments have become more prominent than ever. So the ability to not only schedule those virtual video meetings via Teams, but also things like tapping into your company's phone dialer system. So let's just say a client calls you, it's automatically going to go through Microsoft Teams, and you're calling via Teams against the particular record in CRM. And at the conclusion of that phone call, it'll automatically track that phone call record for the sales consultant against the record. It can also download the transcript of that conversation, which can be saved as well, which helps with training purposes down the track as well. So again, it's the emphasis is just making that as easy as possible for the consultants and assistants when dealing with clients. We don't want them to be doing a lot of manual tasks and manually copying and pasting into the CRM. Dashboards and to-do lists, again, this is something that we see a lot. People are still using pen and paper in their own filing systems, especially dealing with clients. I've seen a lot of this where they'll have a particular client and they'll have a particular folder for that client with all their manual notes, any documents that client's provided them, and then they're writing their to-do list for that client all on pen and paper, which is something that really shouldn't be done in this day and age. So dashboards and to-do lists are a way to combat that, and in order for them to be done effectively, they need to be tailored to the actual user. So what we like to do is make sure we have a dashboard for a sales director, sales manager, a sales consultant, a sales assistant. Each of those will have specific needs with different information per that particular user. For example, a sales director, they might want to see more charts and diagrams that are showing the number of opportunities that are coming in for that particular month, a particular region, so they might know, so they can make decisions as to whether they need to spend more resources in a particular region. But if you look at a consultant, they really need to know when they log into that CRM, they need to know exactly what activities are due for that day, what's overdue, what's scheduled for the next day, and then going to their leads and opportunities, which leads and opportunities they need to contact, and that should be automatically filtered by their most likely opportunities to pay that deposit. They need to be spending their time on, let's just say, the more hot opportunities, more hot leads. And with that being said, they shouldn't be spending 1 to 2 hours of their day planning what they're going to do for that day. It should already be there as soon as they log into the system. It's the first thing that they see, and it keeps it nice and clean. Single view of the customer, again, it's something that it's easier said than done, and this is not just specific to the home builder industry. It's the majority of clients we deal with. It's very hard to keep one contact per person. So I'll give an example. If someone was to build a house within a particular home builder, you'll generally see that person entered in the system as a contact 4 or 5 times, which is not good at all, because firstly, that means that all the different conversations they're having are going to be scattered across different contact records in the system. Predominantly in the home building industry, there's going to be a lot of documents that a contact will have to provide. Their Section 32, permits, any information around their soil and survey reports. So all of that is getting provided. So as a customer, I'd expect all of that to be stored centrally, and no matter who I speak to within the organisation should be able to pull that up at a moment's notice. So that comes down to having one contact and making sure that each time you open a particular contact record in the CRM, you can see their full history with your business. You can see if they've bought a house with you before, if they've inquired a few years ago. You can see all the activities that they've had with the business, all documents that have come through during their previous history or their previous engagements with you. Another item, and it's extremely simple, it's categorization of your contacts. A simple contact type is something that we don't see implemented enough, and that can be as basic as having something like categorizing them, whether they're a customer, whether they're a banker, whether they're a broker, a vendor, especially again in that home building industry. You'll be dealing with a customer might bring along their banker or their broker and want to attach that to their opportunity. So you need to be able to segment them, because you don't want to be sending marketing communications to a banker or a broker that's specific to what a customer should be receiving. So that's something that's very basic, but it's something that's not really implemented or executed as it should be. Mobile accessibility. So Dynamics, the CRM, Microsoft Dynamics CRM, is designed to be used on mobiles and tablets. You don't need to do any additional code or creating a separate mobile app. Whatever is built within your CRM that works on the desktop can be used on a phone or a tablet. And again, going to that construction industry, and again in the home building, it's extremely relevant. In all these display homes, it's very relevant for assistants and consultants to be walking around the display homes, speaking to customers as they're browsing along the different display homes. And if they're interested, you can get their information, input it directly into the CRM, rather than bringing them back to their desk and then having them sit down, having a face-to-face meeting, and then having to manually type it all out, or getting them to fill in the paper sheet and then inputting that at the end of the day. You should be able to do that with your phone or tablet and get them straight into the system. And then the last one as well, the home builder process is not just used for sales. Moving down the track, when you sort of get down into the, let's just say customers built a house and they're in the warranty phase, when you've got all your warranty inspectors that are going out for the warranty checks, they can also take out their phone or their tablet, which connects to the CRM, raising any defects, raising any work orders with vendors and suppliers. All of that can be done leveraging the phone or the tablet. So it's important to make use of those and get the full benefit out of them. I'm going to just touch on marketing and some personalised engagement. So the home builder journey, it's an extremely emotional journey. It's very different to just buying clothes or a new phone or something like that. It's a big investment, and it's a large milestone for a lot of people. So as a business, as a home builder, it's important to know that it's something that it's an opportunity to actually stand out among the other home builders and actually understand that and understand the customer journey. So you really need to make sure that they're feeling supported. So when they're coming into your display homes, you need to make sure that they're greeted. They have a seamless check-in process, making sure that if they've got an appointment, they know exactly where they're going, and all of that can be managed within the CRM. Going back to my last point around appointments and activities and emails, all of that can be, if that's done cleanly and easy for the consultants to manage, that means it's going to be seamless when the customer actually enters a display home for those particular appointments. Personalised communications. So this is where you leverage your CRM and your database. So all that information you're capturing and you're understanding about your customer, and again, making sure you're capturing the key information and not just information that's not really relevant. Leveraging that data for all your communications that you're sending out to them. So a large place where we see customers get stalled or stuck is during that quote phase, or at the time where they need to pay the deposit, because again, it's a large investment. They often sort of spend a lot of time thinking about that. So this is where you really want to target your customers and not pepper them with too much information. But if let's just say customers inquired about a particular home design, and your business has a promotion, you want to, at a moment's notice, be able to pull a list of all those customers who have got a quote for that particular home design and send them an EDM with that home design name, the quote price, the promotion, and that's just giving them more incentive to sort of get back and engage with the business and get them back into the system, speak to a consultant and help them pay that deposit and make sure they feel supported doing so. The last item is subscription lists. Again, very, very simple, but something that's not done enough, which is subscription lists. So the majority of home builds that we see will just have a generic opt-in, opt-out, global opt-in marketing, where it's either yes or no. So if someone says no, they then completely lost all their engagement with that particular home builder. So a way to combat that is using subscription lists. So obviously within buying a house, there's a lot of different components: weekly newsletters, advice on finance, pre-approval, house and land packages, availabilities, because the customer might not be in a position where they're ready to build, but they still want to be engaged in terms of if a particular house and land package becomes available, they want to be notified on that. But if they just do that global opt-in, opt-out, they won't be able to receive that. So giving the customer the opportunity to select which areas of the business they want to stay engaged with is extremely beneficial, because in, say, 1 to 2 years, when they're ready to buy, they've got the finance, they're more likely to be engaged with your company rather than just going straight to Google or just going out to just the estates where there's all the display homes there next to each other. And with that previous point that I just mentioned, as a customer, when you go out to these estates and you go to a particular display home for a particular home builder, you might deal with someone, you might submit an inquiry, but then as soon as you walk out of that display home, there's 5 or 6 other home builders next to each other. So from that point of view, as a company, you want to make sure that you're standing out and making sure that as soon as that customer leaves your display home, they receive a text message or they receive an email thanking them for attending, having a link in that text message or email saying, thank you for attending, can we book you in an appointment with a sales consultant? So constantly having that engagement with them. And again, this is where you really want to put everything on autopilot and automate as much of this as possible. So as a marketing department, you really want to sit down with your sales team and understand that buyer journey. So it can be very different, because depending on the different product or home design or facades they're choosing, it can take them on a different journey. So firstly, you can literally get a whiteboard and map all of that out, and then you can leverage the Microsoft marketing tool to use things like campaign and marketing automation, which is you map out the particular journey. So as I mentioned, if someone goes to a display home, when they leave, you want to send them a text message. If they book an appointment and they click schedule that appointment, then that goes into a particular journey. They might receive a particular EDM for the home design they've inquired on. And again, you can just keep building that out. So you're not, as a marketing department and a sales department, you're not manually spending hours and hours on end going through all your database and pulling in marketing lists to do blasts, email blasts or EDM blasts on home designs. All of that can be tracked within the marketing automation, and just building out that journey and putting it all on autopilot. Another item which is something that's not used as often as it should be is lead scoring. So within, especially the last 2 years, the amount of leads within this home building industry, it's just skyrocketed. So the amount of inquiries coming through, you need a way to be able to filter through those. So that you've got your generic ways which you can either mark someone as whether they're hot, warm or cold, but you want to go beyond that and not just use simple category A, B or C. You want to be able to leverage things like their web analytics. So someone submitting a form from your company's website and they are created as a lead, you want to be able to track things like what other web pages on their website are they viewing, how long are they spending on a particular form, what home designs are they clicking on. All of that can be tracked against their lead record after they've submitted a web inquiry, and you can then use those web metrics to actually build out scores. So that way, when your sales consultant logs in for the day and they've got all the opportunities or leads that are assigned to them, you can filter their to-do lists, as I mentioned earlier, by the hottest leads or the leads with the hottest score. So that way they know when they're contacting their leads, they know they're quite interested compared to just trying to do cold calling and just calling people randomly, trying to gauge their interest. A lot of that can be done for you rather than having to do it manually. That's it from my side. So Gareth, I might pass that back to you for the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Nav. And I might pick on you first for the first question we've got, if that's okay, mate. And if you can just keep sharing your screen there for me as well.
Back up.
Thanks, buddy. Cheers. So I've just got one from Jose here. So is the CRM generally used to manage the sales process, or can it also be used for other aspects of the home builder journey?
Yeah, so generally what I went through was mostly the sales process, which is getting customers in from the inquiry and getting them up until the point where they pay a deposit, where they've pretty much said and communicated that they're going to be building with your particular home builder. But after that's done, that's essentially done for a sales consultant. But the next stage is the customer is now going to be they're going to be engaged with your business from the construction phase. And within this home build journey, land can take time to title. So there's a lot of time where they're going to be sitting in the system. So they still need to be engaged with the business. So from a construction point of view, it can be used to track the life cycle of that home being built. So this is where you can leverage the Power Platform and go beyond that opportunity and actually create what you call, depending on how you want to design it, but you can have what we call a project or a home build, and that will track the different stages of that house as it goes along the journey. So as a customer, you can also, every time they contact and someone is dealing with them during the construction phase, they can provide them insights as to where they are along that journey on the construction phase. And then once the home is actually built, that goes into what they call a warranty phase, where the home is under warranty. So if there's any defects or issues with the house that they've just moved into, all those defects need to be tracked and they need to be managed, and that can easily be done via the customer service module in CRM. So customers can either call up, they can raise a particular defect with the customer, that can be created as a case within the CRM, or as I mentioned earlier, warranty inspectors, they can go out and inspect that particular house or that defect, and if it is a valid defect, they can then again raise a case, raise a defect, and they can then generate a work order, send that out to a supplier, and get a plumber or an electrician straight out to the customer and have that sorted out for them. And again, all of that gets tracked essentially against that contact or the customer record in the CRM. So
and
yeah,
to that point a little bit further, Navin, just another completely different lens on a way in which you can use that CRM within the sector. We've done a fantastic project recently for a building organisation to help them manage their subcontractors. So no two subcontractors are created equal, as we know. Some are particularly good in some areas and some are a little bit rubbish. So what they've done over time is created an area of the CRM specifically for management of those subcontractors. They score and give them a performance rating at the end of the bid, as well as at the end of their delivery, to ensure that they're easy to work with and have done the job that they said they would do across various specific areas in which they work. Then when they're next looking to put a bid together, they're able to look at that analysis, understand the ratings, and get, if you like, a preferred group of subcontractors in which they'll send the tender to. So again, a really different lens. It's not looking at the customer or the buyer of the house, but it is looking at them improving their lot and being a lot more effective when they're dishing work out to other parties.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Chrissy. And while I've got you on screen here, I've just got another one. So this may have been referring to Power Platform originally, but can we build our own solutions using this platform?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. We've been conducting sessions on behalf of Microsoft for the last 2 years, and you may see it out advertised on LinkedIn and the like, called App in a Day. And essentially that's a one-day exercise for your own people, those people that might create the analysis in Excel or the business analyst type skill set to get involved and to see how much they can do themselves. Now, we've seen some excellent solutions being built as a result of those in a day series, and also some awesome prototyping when those individuals go back to their own organisation, because once you do understand how simple it really is limitless in terms of what you can digitize. I guess with great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility. How's it go? But essentially, you do need to be careful that you don't create a myriad of solutions all over the business that people struggle to understand. What do I use when? How can I be sure that it's secure? How can I be sure that people know to use it? So there's also a fantastic Centre of Excellence toolkit that we're very well versed at coming into the business, spending a half day even, and just helping them set themselves up for success so that they know that they're having a centrally managed platform, that there's no wild west out there. But equally, there is a time in which the citizen developer, we call them, needs to ask for help. And I guess that's the magic of the platform, is knowing when you're starting to stretch the bounds of what is capable from an internal employee. But the truth is, yes, absolutely, you can build your own Power Apps. I've seen some great ones coming through, even if it's just something as simple as a leave request. I want to request some leave, it needs to get approved by somebody, and then I need to confirm the outcome to that requester. All that stuff is very simple.
Thanks for that, Chrissy. Just coming back to Nav there. So how do we generally differentiate between what's considered a lead and what's considered an opportunity?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So as I mentioned earlier, the amount of leads that are coming through, especially within the home builder industry at the moment, it's huge. I think with all the home builder grants that have recently been, especially I know in Melbourne particularly, it's there's a lot of interest. So a lot of people are either going into display homes and submitting web inquiries from the website. So that means as a sales consultant or sales rep, when you need to filter through those leads, it's a big task. So when you're talking about leads and opportunities, there is a big differentiation, but a lot of people often see them as the same thing. So the way we like to look at leads and the way we like to set that up within this home builder journey is leads are essentially anything that's come through directly from a website or someone's phoned in where they've just provided their name or their mobile, but they haven't really gone into the detail as to their time frame to purchase or their budget or anything like that. So we leave leads where you've only got your basic information, so name, email, phone call, whether they've opted in or opt out to marketing. So when a sales consultant calls up that particular lead and gathers their information about them, and if that customer says, okay, I've got a budget of X, I want to purchase in the next 6 to 12 months, that's when you want to qualify that lead and make them an opportunity, get them out of that lead pool, out of that inquiry, and then as an opportunity, you can start asking those additional questions and understanding their journey and a bit more information around them. And then going back to that whole lead scoring concept I was talking about, you can have leads that are automatically qualified. So someone might submit a lead, but then the next day they might populate a bit more information via one of the web inquiry forms. So that data can then override what's in CRM. They might have asked that additional question around their time frame to purchase. So that lead can then automatically get qualified. And again, it gets out of that lead pool. So I guess to simplify that question, leads are essentially very minimal basic information, opportunities where you're at a point where you're ready to sit down with that customer and ask them more information about their buying journey and where they're at the buying journey and how you can support them and get them to sort of start doing a quote with your organisation.
Thanks for that, Nav. I've just got a couple for Jonathan here. So regarding the tactical solutions versus foundations, how does the project approach differ?
Thanks, Gareth. I think it's it's like as Christy referred to before, some of the app in a day style approaches where we can kind of, in the tactical approaches, it's very much, the platform is very much suited to brainstorming across the types of process problems that an organization might have, and then picking one and giving it a shot in the platform. And that's because it's very easy to kind of whiteboard up what a solution might look like and then to mock it up inside the software. And so it's very much suited to engaging both organization and partner, Fusion 5, in building that and trying it. And that's what we did with, say, the industry body that was looking at healthy home standards. They had that existing Access database, so it was very much a case of looking at that and then trying to replicate that inside the Microsoft Power Platform. And as it turned out, that was pretty easy. Not blindingly simple as in you do it in 2 hours, but in a couple of days you can pull together a very strong prototype of it. And that was changing the thinking from, hey, we need to do a project and a big data migration to one of, hey, what would it look like if we just created this anew, didn't bank on doing the data migration, but looked at how we might start in a fresh format. And if you consider the longer term, the more foundational projects, that looks more like a typical project where it needs, because it's such an organizational wide process scope and impact, it needs that kind of upfront engagement where you say, okay, let's look at the process in depth and make sure that we understand exactly how we're going to measure success, and then embody that into the solution design. And that's a more typical kind of delivery, albeit because the platform is suited to configuration and shows and tells. That's how we approach it. So you'd have a project and you'd have iterative sort of show and tell looks at the software with the user groups, so that you really get them feeling and knowing that their input is going directly into the design of the solution. So kind of that app in a day approach versus the iterative project approach where they can see their input and design having its effect.
Thanks, JR. And just one final one you may have touched on slightly there, but from Michael here. So how much are companies using their own in-house skills versus Fusion 5 skills, and does it change over time?
Yeah, that's an excellent one, because I think that's what we've seen with some of these organizations, that they do have a desire to adopt more of these low-code technologies and be able to leverage their skills in-house. And I think that reflects what I was saying before, that organizations have already been building solutions in Excel spreadsheets and Access databases over the years. So it's not like this has never been done before. They have been, it's just they haven't really had visibility of where these things exist and who's using them. So that's what they gain in the solution. And so the way it's tended to occur with Fusion 5 projects is that maybe we start with more of the work up front in that initial project. We transfer skills across to the client's people during the project, and then inside some of those tactical solutions, maybe they do them as a start and we come in and advise and have a look at what they've done, and that's where they start to hone their skills. But essentially we start up here and then we ramp down, and they start down here and then they ramp up over time as they grow those internal skills, both in the construction elements of the, no pun intended, but the building elements of the platform, but also the governance. I think that's a real knowledge transfer that occurs across the projects.
Thanks, JR. And I've just got a new one here from Scott, so I might give this one over to Nav. Regarding leads and opportunities for home building, what capabilities exist for returning clients, for example, investors or clients with multiple concurrent opportunities?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So with leads coming through, how we like to look at it is, if someone's built a house for the first time, let's just say 6 months ago they came through the system, so they would have been created as a lead. And when you qualify that lead, it creates not only an opportunity, but also creates them as a contact. So if they were then say, after they built their first house, engage again, they'll generally come through, it'll create a lead, but it'll also pick up their existing contact record on the system. So from there, you just open up their contact record, and then you'll create another opportunity for that contact. So it's the same contact record, but they'll have multiple, they can have another opportunity. So in the investor scenario where you've got someone building 4 or 5 houses at the same time, you just have one contact record, but you've got 5 different opportunities, and those opportunities could be dealing with the same sales consultant, or they could be dealing with multiple sales consultants. So yeah, it's very easy to do. It's just, again, the emphasis on that. You don't want to be creating 5 different contacts. You want one contact and 5 opportunities, and each of those opportunities would be specific to that particular house that they're building. It'll have its own quotes, will have its own home designs, it might have a different time frame to purchase and a different budget. So all of that information needs to be tracked individually on that opportunity record, but again, emphasising the same contact.
Thanks heaps, Nav. And unless we've got any other questions, I think we can wrap up under time. So, hey, I just want to say thanks to all of our presenters today. I know you guys put a lot of work into this over the past couple of weeks, and it shows and it is appreciated. If any of our attendees today do have any further questions, or you're keen for us to expand on anything you've heard today, please feel free to reach out to us directly, or any of the speakers you've heard from today. As I mentioned up top, I will be sharing a recording of this presentation towards the end of the day today. But other than that, I think I can let you all have 6 minutes of your time back. Thank you very much for attending today. It's been appreciated. Take care, everyone. Cheers.